exceptional.
Believe it or not, the Cincinnati Reds are doing something that they haven't done before this offseason, and that is actually stick to their plan. By doing so, they are going to make a way to fast track the young talent from the minor leagues straight to the majors. Jeff and I are going to discuss that. Plus, we are going to take your comments and questions on today's Aloha Friday live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Let's go.
You are Locked On Reds, your daily Cincinnati Reds podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Reds. Welcome into this Aloha live edition for a Friday afternoon. My name is Jeff Carr. I am your co-host of the Locked On Reds podcast alongside Stephen Offenbaker. We are lifelong Cincinnati Reds fans that have turned an addiction to this team into information for you. Locked On Reds is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks as always for making us your first listen. We are free and available on all platforms. On today's podcast, people are angry and I'm confused. We were going to talk about why, because the winter meetings were kind of quiet for the Cincinnati Reds, but if you didn't see that coming, well, then you've not been paying attention. We're going to tell you why, and we're going to tell you what exactly the plan is that the Reds are sticking to and why it is important. Before we jump into all of that, I wanted to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. And Steve, where we're going to start today is with something that the Reds are doing that surprises me. And it's not because they didn't do anything. It's not because they didn't sign somebody to a 4,000 gajillion billion $1 million contract for 27 years and stock options and all that stuff. It's because they're sticking to a plan. And before we jump into that, I want to let everybody know, give us a comment on what your thoughts on the Reds are right now, because I'm seeing a lot on Twitter. People are angry, Steve, and I'm not really sure why.
Well, I mean, I know why, and I don't fault people their anger. I mean, this franchise has done a lot of really dumb things over the last couple of years to alienate this fan base. And I think that everybody is looking through I'm pissed off at Phil colored glasses with everything that the Reds do right now, or everything that the Reds don't do right now. So I get it. And they've never truly been given. And I told you that the Castellinis made a mistake by not giving Reds fans an outlet at Reds Fest to vent the frustration and get it out of their systems. They've not been given that. They haven't had the opportunity to do that. And quite frankly, since that has not been made available to them, I think people are going to stay ticked off until the Reds put a winner on the field.
That's fair. And I've seen lots of frustration, consternation, constipation, maybe not that word, but I've seen a lot of folks that are unhappy with the fact that even the Pirates did something, but the Reds didn't. And I think that it has to be pointed out that for once in our lives as Reds fans, the Reds had a plan and they stuck to that plan. I don't understand why they thought it was going to be any difference. The Reds are not going to keep up with the Joneses, Steve. They're just not.
No, they're definitely not going to keep up with the Coens. That's for sure.
Yes.
This team is not going to be spending money, and I have to try and find a way to be okay with that. And for me, I have kind of been a proponent of this plan that Nick Krall says he is trying to implement and run. I think the Reds can be good. They can be competitive with the talent base they've now put in place to start, utilizing. I wish we could find a better name for this than the Tampa model. I don't know, whatever it is we're calling this, the churn and burn roster, the flip them while you can roster, whatever it is we're going to call that. I can get behind this thing where we keep players until they have about 2 to a year and a half of team control left, and you trade them for new guys, and you just keep doing that with a couple signings to keep some faces of the franchise around. I'm all on board with that. But what that means is we have to not look at the Dodgers and the Yankees and the Padres and think the Reds are doing something wrong. They're running a different plan. And quite frankly, the Yankees, Dodgers, Padres way right now is kind of the lazy way. They're going to go out, they're going to spend a boatload of money. It might work, it might not. Ask the Yankees and the Dodgers how it worked out for them and their boatloads of money last season. It didn't. In case you were wondering, the World Series trophy resides in Houston. So, sometimes money isn't the great equalizer in this game that we make it out to be. So if the Reds can compete in the way that Tampa competes, and we get there by the end of 2024, I'll be a happy guy. And I'm willing to give Nick Krall just enough time and space and rope to either figure it out or hang himself.
And speaking of Nick Krall, he had a couple of good quotes, and I noticed these quotes. They were in a article in The Athletic by C. Trent Rosecrans when he was talking about the Reds being very quiet this winter meetings. Nick Krall had this to say. He said, if you look at the core of our big league club, we have 4 pitchers that made their major leagues debut last year that were 3 starters and Alexis Diaz. They did really well. We've got Tyler Stevenson and Jonathan India starting on the big league club. I know that there were some injuries last year, and I feel really good about the core actually in the big leagues. Being able to grow younger players to the big leagues is what we need to do. That's key. I feel good that we're moving in the right direction. Steve, the stated goal, and we'll talk a lot about this on today's podcast, but the stated goal for this Reds team, draft, develop, things like that, means that this offseason, the point of this offseason is opening doors for Elly De La Cruz, opening doors for top prospects like Christian Encarnacion-Strand, Brandon Williamson, Levi Stout. They've done that.
Now they just have to follow through with it. I've told you a couple times, and I've said it on the show a couple times, I really think that the circumstances are aligning for Elly De La Cruz to go out to Goodyear this year, batter the ball around for 3 weeks, and make the opening day roster. I don't think that's very far-fetched. I think he has, skyrocketed into rock star status, and he's going to be there sooner than later. These other guys, there's some wiggle room, but I think by May, we're going to start seeing more and more and more of this young talent. And what that means is the Reds can't go out and spend $40 million on guys that are just going to be in the way. And those players, they see what Cincinnati's doing too. They're not going to come here and know that no matter what they do in 2 months, they're going to lose their job to player X, Y, or Z that's going to be brought up and be given the playing time. So, Nick Krall has to be smart. And we've talked about this, Jeff. They need some outfield help. They need some help at catcher, and we're going to get into the help at catcher they're trying to bring in. And I see that they have a strategy. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but there is a strategy unfolding behind the plate, and they need to go get some bullpen arms. And that's really all they need to do while they're continuing to follow through with the stated goal and the plan of bringing up the talent.
And that's really the key here is that, look, I'm not being a shill here by saying that this is what the Reds plan is. I'm trying to set the expectation. I feel like there's lots of Reds fans that have lost the expectation. They think that baseball operates like MLB The Show, and you can just go out and get any player that you want to get. It doesn't work for the Reds this way, and there's 2 different ways that you can build a championship team. There's money and there's time. And the Reds have chosen time. And as much as we might be a little bit impatient and we want to see them succeed right now, we want to see them succeed yesterday, all this other stuff, it's not going to happen instantly. The Reds have chosen, all right, you either spend money or you spend time. They're going to spend time where it comes to building a winning ball club. They made a couple of moves. None of the moves are going to get anybody out of their chair. Probably the only move that they made to add a player with any experience, really. I mean, they have very, peppered experiences based on the different guys that you look at, but they added the one guy, Silvino Bracco. He's a right-handed relief pitcher from Venezuela. He's pitched in parts of 6 seasons with the Diamondbacks going back to 2015. He also pitched for like 10 seconds last year for the Braves. But look, he's had 5 total innings in the last 4 seasons. None of these guys are stopping the young guys from getting up, and that is the point.
Well, and as I mentioned, some of these other guys, there's a lot of catcher activity, a lot of things going on with trying to shore up what was an abysmal position last year. They did some things with the Rule 5 draft, and we're going to talk about all of that coming up here in just a minute. But before we talk about that, I want to shout out the sponsor of today's podcast. Today's podcast is brought to you in part by our friends over at Built Bar. You have got to try yourself some Built Bar, and you have got to try the new reimagined flavors that they've got over at Built Bar. You're not going to want to miss out on these. They've got cookie dough topper. They've got coconut brownie bar, and they've got a coconut brownie topper. They've got white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on a granola bar. It's very, very filling. It's very, very tasty, and it's very, very healthy. Built Bar didn't let you down for the holidays either. They have got a candy cane brownie puff. I said the magic words for Jeff. He's probably drooling right now. I said puff. Built Puffs are like biting into this cloud of marshmallow goodness. You are definitely going to be just addicted and stuck on Built Bars if you try these things, folks. I made the mistake of trying them just one time, and I am hooked. They are always stashed in my locker at work. That's how I get through some of my 12-hour overnight shifts. Thank you, Built Bar, for that. First off, if you haven't tried Built Bar before, they are literally the best tasting protein bars ever built. They're revolutionizing nutrition as we know it with 100% real chocolate. They've got 17 grams of protein and shockingly low sugar and calories, just 130 calories. And talking about that low sugar, if you're on a keto diet, if you're trying to stay away from the carbs, these are the protein bars for you because they keep you on keto and they taste amazing. You can sink your teeth into that first bite, and it's pretty much going to change your life forever. You're probably wondering which of the new flavors are my favorite. Well, I got to tell you that I'm pretty addicted to like the whole holiday gig on anything other than pumpkin spice. So I'm all in on the candy cane puff. I want to get a bunch of those stockpiled so that when they go away, I have them around for more than just the holidays. So you're going to have to try Built for yourself. And here's what you can do. You can head over to built.com right now, and you're going to get 15% off of your order by using the promo code LOCKEDON15. That's at built.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15 on your next order to save 15% off of your Built Bar purchase. Don't miss out. Head over there today. Built.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON15. All right, Jeff, we jammed that first segment up there and we didn't get through half of the stuff. So I want to circle back instead of moving into segment 2 here because there was some things that we haven't talked about. We had our great 2-parter with Tyler Stevenson, and that was more important, I think, than going over some of these small moves that the Reds were making. But I do want to touch on them because we've been talking about what it is they're going to do to fill out this roster. We were wondering if the Rule 5 draft was going to produce anybody for the Reds, and it did for about 30 seconds. And they've gone out and signed a couple catchers. They've gone out and signed another pitcher that, his big league experience consists of helping to smooth out the mound at the end of a game. I mean, he really didn't pitch very much. And then the catcher situation, one I'm excited about. Chucky is back. They have brought Chucky Robinson back into the fold, invited him to spring training. I think this is a fantastic move. I've been saying all along that I thought what they did by letting everybody else walk and keeping Chucky around was that you've got a guy that you can stick down in AAA, that he's not going to come up and be a world beater if you need him to play, but he's going to know the big leagues a little bit. He showed that he can catch the ball, which is like now our new benchmark for catchers in Cincinnati. And every once in a while, he might bumble his way into an extra base hit. That's a guy I want down in AAA. I'm not talking about him being a starter. He's not even catcher number 2, but he's a great insurance policy down in Louisville.
Oh, I 100% agree. And they added another insurance policy in a non-roster invitee in Johnny Pareda. So you look at Chucky Robinson, you look at Johnny Pareda. Neither of these guys are currently on the 40-man roster, but they're there and they're waiting. Now, Pareda himself has actually not made a major league debut. He's played in AAA, but he is going to be 27 this year and has yet to debut. So there's something there. Again, we're talking about dudes that aren't going to block the way. If for some reason Matt Nelson or Daniel Veoheen or something like that really vaults up through the minor leagues, I don't expect them to be in the major leagues this year. But if there is a chance that they do, neither Chucky Robinson nor Johnny Pareda are standing in their way. I don't even really think that Luke Maile is standing in their way, but that's a whole other thing. But yes, Chucky Robinson is back. Jared Solomon is back. A couple of relief pitchers. We mentioned the one relief pitcher who is basically smoothing out the mound at the end of the game. His major league experience consists of 7 total innings across 3 appearances last year for the Rays, in which he basically was just on mop-up duty. And to quote his statistics would be superfluous, but they weren't great. But he's literally just going to be probably a camp body. I would be surprised if he breaks camp with the team, but his name, Kevin Herget. I think we haven't even said the poor guy's name yet, but Kevin Herget. And it's not that Herget, that's Jimmy Herget, who used to be in system and currently pitches, I think, for the Angels, and he had that herky-jerky delivery. It's not that Herget. So, yeah, these guys were added. Don't necessarily think this isn't even worthy of saying that they don't move the needle. Like the needle didn't even think about itself with these moves.
Other than shoring up the catcher, the rest of these guys, I think, are just, roster filler for spring training, and maybe they'll catch lightning in a bottle somewhere. The other move, Jeff, that really, wow, the Rule 5 draft. The Reds did in fact draft a catcher / outfielder in Blake Sable in the Rule 5 draft, and he was a member of this organization for about 35 seconds. The Reds turned right around and traded him to the San Francisco Giants for a player to be named later. Now you have here or cash considerations, and I thought when I initially read this deal it was and cash considerations. I think they're getting a player and money out of this deal, which makes me speculate that maybe they already have an agreement on who that player is going to be. They're just waiting for the Giants to sign somebody else. Like maybe the Giants have something in work. I think there's more to this deal. It's not going to be a world beater. Again, there's not going to be a press conference off of this, but it was a little peculiar the way this whole thing went down.
Yeah, I think part of it's just semantics, because when you make a Rule 5 selection, you pay $100,000 to the team that you select them from. They got Blake Sable, I believe, from the Pirates. And then you, if you do not keep him on your active roster for the entire season, so if Blake Sable was not on the Major League roster for the entirety of 2023, they would then offer him back to the Pirates for $50K. And if you turn him down, then he stays with the team. But regardless of that, this trade negates all that worry. Now the player to be named later can be on your active roster, can be on your minor league roster, whatever, and the Reds get cash considerations for it. Likely the Giants just paid for the $100,000 fee that the Reds sent to the Pirates. So I think that's probably, yeah, I think you're right. I think I typed that in the notes wrong. It's and cash, simply just to pay for that. So essentially the Reds got a potential something for literally nothing. Like Blake Sable wasn't even on their team. So it's kind of one of those marginal moves, like off Broadway or something like that. But at the end of the day, this could turn into something. And that is probably what we're looking at for the most of this offseason.
Well, listen, your new best friend from Reds Fest, Nick Kroll, had this to say about the moves that he made. I quote, "We've got to know who we are." Kroll said, "We can't just make moves to make moves because that's not improving our club. That's probably just going to make us worse if we're just doing something and locking a guy up and saying, oh, we did this to appease you." I thought that was a very interesting choice of words, Jeff. Back to the quote. "I don't want to just appease somebody. Our goal is to win, and this is how we feel we have built a team to win." This is probably the most defiant, most strongly worded Nick Kroll quote that we've seen out of him, something that looks like a little thought was put into it, like maybe somebody helped him polish it a little bit. He didn't stumble and bumble and fumble his way through this. He kind of threw down the gauntlet here and said, listen, I'm not trying to appease you. I'm trying to build a winner. And that's a bold strategy, Cotton, let me tell you.
I was going to say, like, I looked at this quote and I'm like, I can see this one of two ways. There's probably plenty of people that read this and are very angry about it, but I'm not. I'm impressed. I'm glad he said this. And I think that this was very well thought out. And we talk about, we want to offer them free PR advice. No edit needed on this one. I think that he did a fantastic job. Look, I think that you can make an argument to say, okay, well, if you do add like a Trey Turner or somebody like that, it's not just going to appease you, and that's not just making a move to make a move. That would improve the club. But at the same time, within the rules that they have set, that move doesn't make any sense. So the way that they are building the team it's nice to see that they're actually sticking to that. And I love the fact that Nick Krall threw down the gauntlet, like you said, and just said, look, this is how we're going to do it. And I believe we will see a step forward this year. We're not going to see the playoffs. We're not going to see this Reds team in the postseason in 2023, but we're going to see the plan. And I think that's what everybody was worried about when we entered this offseason is what is the plan? Nick Krall says, I know the plan. We're sticking to the plan. We're not breaking the plan. And that has me pumped.
And along those lines, Jeff, I think if the Reds are going to go sign a free agent to a major league deal, like we're kind of hoping that they'll do for the outfield or for the rotation / bullpen, those signings are going to come closer to spring training, maybe even once spring training starts already. That seems to be the case for these teams that are trying to follow this model. They're not going to go out and spend big money. They're going to look for bargains near the end. So, the Reds are not going to keep up with the Joneses or the Cohens, as we have determined, but they believe in their plan. They believe that as the time moves forward, this plan is going to pay off. And while it's frustrating fans right now, the Reds are hoping to deliver long-term success.
Exactly. So, question is, and we've kind of already answered this, is what does a successful 2023 offseason look like for the Reds, and why are they already kind of halfway there? We're going to explain that coming up next. Before we do, though, wanted to let you know you can follow us on Twitter. In between episodes, we're on the Twitterverse spewing different thoughts, whether it be about baseball, Star Wars, football, whatever. All on Twitter. You can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Steve at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. And you can follow the show at Locked On Reds. Also, make sure you're following us right here on YouTube. If this is your first time watching us, thank you. Thanks for joining us here on this live edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. Make sure you drop a comment below. Let us know what's on your mind when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds. And by the way, coming up on Monday, we are going to dive into Hunter Greene and the one thing that he can do for a breakout season in 2023. Spoiler alert, I'm not talking about a third pitch. Yeah, you'll have to see what we're talking about on Monday.
So, Jeff, I see a lot of comments rolling in. I just want everybody to know I see you guys. We're going to get to you in just a few minutes. We're gonna cover a few more things here, and we're going to dive into all of these things when we put you guys in the driver's seat. So bear with us just a few more minutes, and we will get to these comments. I see you guys over there.
Exactly. And I'm looking forward to that coming up here in just a few minutes. But before we get to that, though, opening up paths to the big leagues for key prospects is the biggest offseason goal for the Reds right now. And if you go out and you sign one of those 11-year deals that the Padres gave to Xander Bogaerts, you're blocking a prospect. Yeah, 11 years. That's a long time. Now, granted, for him personally, he gets to live in San Diego for 11 years. That's a pretty good gig. But overall, for this Reds team, speaking about the Reds, people are getting so angry about the fact that they did not do anything of note during the winter meetings. Now, there were talks about, rumors about maybe the Reds are talking about possible trades in the future. You might see the kind of prospect swap that some other teams have done. I wonder exactly what that's going to look like, and that gives me a little bit of worry to see what a trade of that caliber might look like, and that's a topic for another episode. But what they have done is by adding some certain guys to the 40-man roster, by not signing these big contracts that are going to hamstring the roster, they've opened up a possibility for Ellie De La Cruz. And that, my friend, is exciting.
Well, I don't think anybody at this point sees a future in 2023 that doesn't include Ellie De La Cruz at the big league level. The more and more time I spend thinking about this, Jeff, I think he's going to be there opening day. And I know there's ramifications as far as, his Super 2 status and his, ability to be controlled longer. I think he's going to force the issue. He has just demolished every level that he's gone to, and I think he'll go to Goodyear and continue to demolish, and the Reds just simply aren't going to have a choice. But he's not the only one with a path in that very narrow window between the end of spring training and let's just call it June 1st. That window in between there. We're going to see Brandon Williamson in that time, if not on the opening day roster. We're going to see Levi Stout in that time, if not on the opening day roster. We're going to see Andrew Abbott in that time, if not on the opening day roster. Spencer Steer is already up. Matt McLean could make noise in spring training and find his way into Cincinnati before June 1st. These things can happen and happen quickly. So, for me, I would much rather them just make those moves and get them to the big league level and not have anybody in their way when they do it. And I think that may be more of what was involved in trading Kyle Farmer than that $6 million salary.
Yeah, I firmly agree on that. And don't tell me Kevin Newman's blocking anybody. Kevin Newman ain't blocking anybody at all. So I think that they have done a brilliant job with the moves that they've made within the margins. Now, I do believe that there are a few moves that they can still make because they need to supplement the roster until all of these guys are up. But then whenever those guys are ready, make sure that the guys that you bring in are guys that you can maybe then swap for other prospects for later down the road or something like that, or 1-year deal type guys that you're not worried about being hamstrung to a large contract. And that's why the Reds didn't make a move for anybody like that. Plus, you're also talking about, the chance for Christian Encarnacion Strand later on this year to make his debut. And we have asked different people throughout the organization who can hit the Toyota Tundra, who's currently in the minor leagues, and they all say it's him. Now, obviously the other one is Ellie De La Cruz, but I think even more so people were saying Christian Encarnacion Strand could be that guy. So very much looking forward to all of these guys. And if the Reds are going to have long-term success, it is through these guys getting to the major leagues, getting comfortable, and becoming huge factors day in and day out.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that, I commend Nick Krall in one, regard, that he's learning to filter the noise out, and he's learning to just, speak a direct truth into the camera and say, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to do it. I'm not deviating from it. And here's where I'm trying to get. I think that he did a fantastic job last year of amassing enough talent that, we got to be realistic about this talent. If they don't they're not all going to make the majors. Some of these guys are going to miss, but there's enough of the talent now that even with the guys that are going to miss, you can still build out a huge quality major league roster that's going to do some damage for a lot of years. So, I understand. I get the frustration. Nobody is more frustrated than me about this team continuing to not win. But I'm willing to give it just that one more season that I think it's going to take to finally turn a corner. I don't know how many times this season I've said, Jeff, that 2024 could be a year for the Reds where they rank, in the top 3 in wins and the bottom 3 in payroll, just because of the way they've structured this whole thing out. And, I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, I'm with you, Steve, because it's very clear opening up paths to the big leagues for key prospects is the biggest offseason goal for this offseason for the Reds right now. And this is the part where we are going to end the preconceived plan for the Locked On Reds podcast here today, as we are live. This is the Aloha Live edition, the Aloha Friday edition of the Locked On Reds podcast. But this is going to wrap us up for part of the podcast. This is our audio part that we will get this cut off at. Thank you all so much for listening. Make sure that you check us out coming up Monday, and make sure that you join us here for the live edition on YouTube. We're going to try and make this every Friday, but as we continue for the question and answer portion of the podcast. But just want to let you know, coming up Monday, we are going to talk about the one key to a breakout season for Hunter Greene in 2023. But thanks as always for making us your first listen. Make sure you check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast. They got the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions and the big game recaps and all that great stuff. Just like Locked On Reds, they are free and available on all platforms. All right, Steve, it's Friday. It's Aloha
It is
Friday.
Friday. It's Aloha Friday. So for the
Bring on
audio
the
listeners, we're going to wrap it up right now. There'll be a second episode in your feed that has the question and answer portion that's coming up right now. All right, folks, I have been seeing you in the comments. Thanks for hanging with us while we reach this point. We're just going to start rolling through these. Some of it is in response to the things we were saying. So Jeff is going to have to defend some of his bad takes along the way. And I don't see anything questioning my great takes, but that's not true. There's stuff in here. I'm just kidding.
You're not looking very hard.
We'll just start. Damon Rice starts us off on the right note, saying aloha. I say aloha. Got my fancy, snazzy new Cincinnati Reds aloha shirt. I found it on eBay, brother. I went shopping.
That's nice.
It is. It came out really good. I'm super stoked. All right.
Too many buttons, though. Too many buttons.
It's a lot of buttons, but it is what it is. We didn't talk about this. The hardest part was seeing the Reds drop to the 7th pick. Yeah. We did not talk about the draft lottery. And, of course the Reds were not going to come out ahead in that. They're the Reds. They were supposed to pick 4th. They ended up getting the 7th pick. That is going to make a bit of a difference as far as which player is going to be available. It's a bummer, but it is what it is. And in the grand scheme of things, this is not the NFL. This is not the NBA. There is no guarantee that your first round pick is going to make it huge. We've got guys on this team right now that were first round picks that have not made it huge. And I won't call them out by name right now, Nick Senzel, but we're just gonna have to hope that whoever they get at 7 is a player that can make it and can stick and can make a difference.
I have seen, and I don't necessarily know what this means right now because I'm not super well versed in what the draft looks like at this moment, but I have seen reports that this is what they call a 7-player draft. They think that there are 7 bona fide dudes, which means that the Reds are just on the fringe of that because they said there's 7 bona fide dudes and the Royals, who picked number 8th, kind of got boned a little bit out of that. So we'll have to see exactly what that all means. We will have lots of different folks on to talk about the draft between now and then. Obviously, that's not going to be till, I believe it's once again going to be during All-Star weekend. So looking forward to that. But I know that Lindsey Crosby over at Locked On MLB Prospects and our friend Jeff Ellis up at Locked On Guardians, they know a lot of stuff about the draft, and we'll be talking a lot to them between now and then.
All right, Jeff. Damon Rice wants to know who has won a World Series with this strategy that Nick Krall is laying out. Give some hope here about this strategy actually ever having proved successful.
Well, I mean, honestly, the first one you think of is the Astros. The Astros don't spend that big on free agency. Even look right now, if you look at Astros Twitter, they're kind of mad because they wanted Wilson Contreras. He went to St. Louis. They kind of wanted Justin Verlander back. He's now in New York. They thought about Jacob deGrom for a second. He's in the other Texas team, so that's got to hurt a little bit more because he's going to be in division. The Astros did not build themselves through free agency. They built themselves from within and supplemented with trades and free agency.
So, and that's a great distinction. The Astros did do it exactly this way. And then when they got to, just needing that little extra bump, they found the success, they found the wins, which put people in the stands, which gave them extra revenue, which allowed them to sign a few guys and spend some money. And the hits just kept on coming. They built from there. But how they turned the corner and got successful was following this model. Tampa is the same way. How they got successful was by following this model. And, they had some World Series disappointment and they've had some playoff disappointment, but they were in the playoffs. They were in the World Series
Guardians
using this model. Cleveland is the next example of not spending a ton of money. Exactly. A couple swings away, an extra inning long ball away, right? So it's just, it can be done. And to Damon's point, I understand where he's going with this is that who's won the World Series? You have to be willing when the time is right to then spend a few dollars to fill whatever position didn't pan out. But, for me, I think success can be found following this model.
And something else that we didn't mention too, with the idea that this offseason, the strategy is just about making sure that the young guys can get to the major leagues, is that next offseason, they have no guaranteed money on the books. So they can take a look at the roster and see, okay, who's panning out, who's not panning out, who do we still have to evaluate and things like that. And they can make just about any move they want to make next season because there's no guaranteed money on the books.
Right. And what you're talking about is they're at $70 million plus, a little over $70 million plus in payroll now. Votto and Moustakas both come off next year. So that's automatically cutting 26, 36.
And everyone else's arbitration.
$41 million is going to come off of just those two guys' contracts. So, there's money to spend.
So that's why, and that's the key distinction too, because obviously, you think 70 million based on 120 million from 2 years ago, and you're just like, well, why aren't they spending some big money? I think I look at this and I say, okay, it makes sense as to why. Golly, I started a thought and I have lost it.
You have definitely lost it. All right. The point is they're going to have money to spend. They don't have to do it right now. They need to get these young prospects up to the big league level and then figure out where their holes are and supplement them. If you think of it, Jeff, we'll circle back. Scott Campbell checks in. Scott says, aloha, Scott. It was so great to meet you and your family out at Reds Fest. Really enjoyed that. Thanks for always tuning in. Debbie Brown wants to know, Jeff, why the Reds need so many catchers. Debbie, they got rid of everybody. The only catcher on this roster after the 40-man roster juggling occurred was Tyler Stevenson. He was the only one left. They need some insurance in case a person gets hurt. And quite frankly, they need a boatload of catchers out in Goodyear for spring training in order to catch all the pitchers and get them up to snuff. So some of these guys may not even come close to sniffing the big league field, but they do need a lot of guys that are able to catch at least through the end of March when spring training breaks.
And that's the key too. When you see a guy get signed as a non-roster invitee, there is a little bit of us that we're going to try and figure out how to get excited about the guy. But in a large part, non-roster invitees are there so that Tyler Stevenson doesn't have to catch every other day, and so that Joey Votto doesn't have to play every other day, and so that you don't have to actually throw your guys who you know are going to be out on the roster and get them all tired before April even rolls around. So there's just a lot of roster filling that goes along with some of these guys. That's why when we look at the guys that just don't have that much major league experience, that probably is just the Reds saying, yeah, we're getting a body in here.
Dave Pemberton checks in, and it was great to see Dave out at Reds Fest. Also, when I was in town, it was great to see a lot of these people. I had so much fun at Reds Fest, Jeff. It was so much fun. Dave says, what catchers do you think this front office would spend money on that would be a serviceable backup that we didn't roll our eyes at when we see them in the lineup? Dave, they're not going to sign any catchers that aren't going to make us feel that way. They already have catcher number 2, and I don't think they're going to add. What do you think, Jeff?
Yeah, I think in a hypothetical scenario, they would look at a guy like maybe like a Mike Zunino, although Mike Zunino might actually be a little bit too expensive, maybe more like a Omar Narvaez type dude. But again, we've mentioned his defense is not necessarily of the best caliber. So then you're looking at guys that are defense first and light hitting and stuff like that. So I don't necessarily know that there is a catcher that they could look at. I think that's one of the reasons that they kind of doubled down and said, okay, Tyler Stevenson is getting unlucky with his health. It's not that he is a brittle catcher. And then they're going to add Luke Maile just to kind of be a backup for 30 or 40 games or something like that. And then maybe you bring up a Chucky Robinson or Johnny Pareda for 5 or 6 games, but overall they're going to give that ball. Tyler Stevenson said 110 to 120 games before he really starts to break down. And I think that the Reds are going to test him on that, and they're going to give him that opportunity.
So if Luke Maile, Luke, I can't do it, Jeff. What's his name?
Maile.
Luke Maile. With Luke Maile. Listen, guys, if you haven't heard me struggle with this, I just want to defend myself one more time. His name is Miley in Hawaiian, and I'm having a real hard time reading it and not saying it correctly. So I apologize. I will get this before the season starts. But if you heard Tyler Stevenson's interview with us, at one point he talked a little bit about Luke. And it's like, whether it's me catching or whether it's Luke catching, this is how things are going to work. So I think the determination has already been made that Luke is going to be catcher number 2. That's what I took away from what Tyler had to say. So I think we just need to embrace that for 2023. Maybe in 2024 things get a little better. Maybe Matt Nelson or Daniel Veyohin makes an appearance on the big league roster, and then we have a different conversation. But I think right now that's probably the group of catchers we're moving forward with.
I agree.
All right, let's see here. Scott Campbell says he just wants to keep up with the Cardinals. That's probably not going to be the year for that. Maybe we can kind of hold our own, but I think that we are probably got one more season in front of us of looking up in the division at the Cardinals and the Brewers, I think, and maybe the Cubs. Who knows? Let's see here. Sorry, I didn't scroll enough far ahead. I tried to do this so that we don't have dead air, but I didn't do it. Let's see.
And the Cardinals themselves are looking at like the Mets and stuff. So I think for us to keep up with the Cardinals, it doesn't mean that we're just keeping up with them.
Listen to Damon's. If Ellie's on the 26th man, I'm traveling from where I live out west to see him play. I am with you, Damon.
It's gonna be fun.
Listen, by the way, I'm already I have secured my travel arrangements for opening a week in Cincinnati. That is going to be a party. I can't work. Jeff and I are putting some great stuff together for that week. So more news on that as we get closer, but I'm excited. I can say 100% for sure I will be in town and it's going to be great.
I've gotten some response too on the Ellie De La Cruz. Like, I think there's been a couple of folks that are just like, are we fabricating this? Are we blowing it out of proportion? Are we actually hyping this dude up, or are we overhyping it? I'm like, no, I think we're hyping this dude up. Like, he's literally going to be amazing. I firmly believe we are looking at a dude who's going to be a staple in the middle of the lineup for many years, and he's going to show that to us this year. Maybe not his first week or two in the league, but make no mistake about it, every level he has touched, he like adapts very quickly, and then he sets that league on fire. Like, I can't wait to see him do it at the major league level, and I expect it's going to happen sooner rather than later.
Debbie Brown says she's going to be at the Cardinals Reds game in June. It's going to be fun to see the young players. I think by then, most of them will be here. So Debbie, I think you're right. You're going to get to see a lot of the young players. Damon, the Castellini's trend centers with a new successful strategy. That's a big ask. Well, it's not a new successful strategy, as we just told you with the Astros in Tampa. But to your point, that's true. And hey, did you tell the people while I was away, Jeff, that, we had our little moment with the SOB, that's son of Bob, Phil Castellini? Did you mention? Listen, folks, I'm going to tell a story because Jeff and I are riding the escalators, and listen, the feedback I'm getting on this whole SOB thing is fantastic, and I'm thinking about making t-shirts, but I'm pretty sure that Phil Castellini, 1, knows who Jeff and I are, 2, knows that I said that, because we passed him on the escalator at Duke Energy Center, and he double taked Jeff and I both and gave me a death dagger look, as exactly like Jeff is showing you. So hey, mission accomplished. I got under his skin. What can I say?
Well, and I want this to be a distinction too. I think that there is an element, and I'm going to be accused of being overly optimistic here, but I think there's an element of Phil and Bob taking their hands off the reins a little bit here. I think that this is them telling Nick Krall, look, this is how much money you got, go do something with it. And this is Nick Krall's plan. I don't think this is the Castellini's plan at all, because I think if it were, the Reds would have gone out and made a big signing during the winter meetings. I think that, yeah, Nick Krall is like answering some detractors, but I think he's also showing that, no, this is how I'm going to run the team. This is Nick Krall's plan. This is not the Castellini's plan.
Scott checks in. Will I get a second round versus Phil at the Reds Caravan? I don't think Scott Campbell was going to be allowed to attend the Reds Caravan. You guys, if you were listening to the Red Reporter during Phil Castellini's appearance during Reds Fest, you'll hear some like booing and some stuff. The radio report. And Scott let Phil know exactly what he thought of him. Good on you, Scott. tell you what. The quirky picker, Chad. I wonder if this is a Chad we know. I don't know. Thinks the Reds should have lost one more game. I think Jeff does too, you guys, because he enjoys being at the ballpark for history, and that would have been history. So, I think he had a whole emergency podcast planned for if the Reds broke their losses in a season record.
It was going to be a long post-game video. I'll just say that. But yeah, it was quite an interesting. And yes, Chad, it's hard to argue with you when you look at the fact that, well, the Pirates, who had better chances than the Reds, had they lost one more game and gotten the Pirates' chances and the Pirates got the Reds, would they have been flipped? Hard to say yay or nay, but you kind of wonder. And that number one pick would have looked nice.
Damon's throwing comments at us, man. He wants a shirt like this for golf season. It's a great idea. I am gonna wear this puppy out to the golf course next time I go. I'll wait till it snows. I'll wait till it snows in Cincinnati. That doesn't matter. My game's terrible, so I'll just wear it anyway. I'll do it on the first great big snow in Cincinnati, and I'll post pictures of me out here at the golf course by the ocean, where it's 75 and sunny, while Jeff's making snowman.
Look at me. I live where there's no winter.
David also says, don't the Astros have the number 8 payroll? And I don't know. I'd have to go look it up.
A lot of that
sounds right, but they didn't. They started spending money after they ran this play and after they turned a corner and got successful with tons of young talent.
But a lot of that is locking up their own dudes, too. And that was something that we had a comment a while back. We did an episode talking about the Reds emulating the Braves and locking up their young guys early.
Here, before you go further into this thought, Dave Pemberton checks back in asking about your thoughts for extending India and Stevenson. So, I know that's where you're going right now. So continue.
Yeah, because doing the Atlanta thing and locking up their guys early, Atlanta has a pretty big payroll. Like I think it's close to 200 million or something like that. And it's all because they've locked up their guys. Sure, they signed a couple of free agents and things like that. But like the contracts they gave to Altuve and the contract they gave to Bregman, and the contract they gave to, their big starting pitchers and stuff, that's where their payroll got so bloated. And that's what's going to happen with the Reds. Like, I don't know that we're going to see everyone locked up, but we're going to see 120, 130, 140 million, and it's going to be because they lock up India. They're going to lock up Stevenson. And to be honest with you, the thing that would get me the most excited this offseason is if they did sign one of those guys to a long-term deal, or if they signed, Nick Lodolo or something like that to a long-term deal this offseason. I don't know that that's in the works, but I kind of hope it is.
I agree. I think there's some problems in doing it this offseason, just in as much as Tyler Stevenson was hurt so much. Jonathan India was hurt so much. I think both of those guys kind of got to put a prove it season together here in 2023 before we look at that. As far as the starting pitchers go, it would not hurt my feelings if they signed Nick Lodolo to some crazy extension right now. I saw enough from him. Yeah. And probably truthfully Hunter Green as well there towards the end. I think both of those guys have proven to be pretty legit. But a pitcher we didn't talk about, Jeff, and Dan Edwards is wanting to hear a little information on Vladimir Gutierrez. And I'm a little, I don't know. I really think he's going to end up being a bullpen guy. And I don't know what his health status is going to allow him to be coming right out of the gate.
That's the biggest thing with him. And it kind of sucks for him personally because he had some terrible luck with the timing of his injury, because now I don't think we'll see him. If we see him at all, we might see him in August, maybe September. Like, it's not going to be a big chunk of this season. And by that point, the Reds are going to have to make a decision. Do we stretch him out at this point? Is our rotation set at that point? I don't know that it'll be set, but will they have 5 healthy guys whenever Goody's coming off the IL? So I think that, you're probably talking about a bullpen assignment for Vladimir Gutierrez, which is such a bummer because him being out of commission when he is literally the worst time, because 2023 is going to be a super prove it year for this roster. And there's going to be a lot of guys that prove that they can stick, and he's just not going to have that opportunity until later on. And by that point, it is probably going to be a bullpen appointment.
And let's not forget, he does have an option left, I think. So, I mean, worst case scenario, after his rehab time ends, they can just send him down to Louisville and think about
And have him be
again
like a
in
sixth or seventh starter.
2024.
Yeah.
If someone gets hurt, he can step up. I really think bullpen is ultimately where he's going to end up, especially given the amount of talent that's in the system right now at starting pitcher. I think if Vladimir Gutierrez is smart, what we saw from him, his stuff in the starting rotation wasn't really anything that just blew us away. He had some good moments. He had some shining spots here and there, but not like Nick Lodolo, not like Hunter Green, not like Graham Ashcraft. I think his best bet is to work on 2 pitches and be a phenomenal bullpen guy.
I'd be honest, and I haven't dug into this to really know, and maybe this is something that I'll do, but I'd be honestly surprised to see if he looks better than Justin Dunn at this point.
Mm-hmm. And you're a little bit higher on Justin Dunn than I am, so I could totally see a scenario where it's Vlad versus Justin Dunn, and I would take Vladimir Gutierrez. Listen, I said I wonder if we know who the quirky picker Chad is, and we do. Jeff, look at this. It's Chad from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. We haven't heard from Chad in a while. Chad, thanks for checking in. If the Reds keep trading away players when they get good, he says, for more prospects, when will the team ever be great? At some point, you have to keep guys and pay them, right? Well, yeah, you have to keep a face or two of the franchise. But if you're taking these good players and bringing in 4 quality prospects, 2 of which stick, if you get a 50% success rate on your prospects that you're bringing in via trade, you continue to grow out this roster, and there's always great talent on it. For this model to be successful, for the Reds to reach a point where they can spend a few dollars and fill some holes, there's going to have to be a churn. We're going to have to not get attached to people. And I think you can build a competitive playoff team with this model and not have to sign more than 2 or 3 guys to bigger deals. I think we're looking realistically at the Reds locking up 1 of the pitchers long-term and 1 of the position players long-term, and then churning and filling everybody else along the way to try and build a winner.
I almost think that they might sign 2 apiece, like 2 pitchers and 2 position players. But again, it's not the whole team. I look at this and I think of the Rays, and this is why we keep saying the Rays model. It's not because we're looking to spend exactly as much as the Rays do. We're trying to operate the team the way that the Rays do, and the Rays are successful year in and year out. Plus, part of what Nick Krall did, he acquired guys that are ready to go in the next couple of years. He also acquired guys like Edwin Arroyo and Chase Petty, who are probably going to take 3 or 4 years before they're ready. So you have waves of prospects. You don't just have one wave and then you're like, well, I don't know what's going to happen after that.
We haven't even talked about Philip Connor, right? Or Connor Phillips, Cam Collier,
guys like that. Those are the next wave of guys. So yes, the whole point is to have multiple waves, and the draft is going to be a huge thing. This is the Reds, and I've said this before, but this is the Reds betting on themselves and whether or not they can live up to the scouting and the development side of things, but they just have to put as many darts in their hand as they can to throw at that dartboard.
Sorry, I'm reading some of these comments that I'm not going to put up on the screen, but they're great. Scott Campbell wants to know if we can have a Locked On Reds group outing at Great American Ballpark next year. I think that's definitely something that's in the works. Somewhere around June, I think, guys. I know I'll be back for opening day. June is probably the next time I'll be in town, so I'll coordinate with Jeff. We'll get something put together for you guys, even if it's a meetup beforehand or afterwards, or we'll come up with something, and we will definitely toss ideas out there for you all to weigh in on before we decide to do anything.
I think a good baseline for that idea would be the Budweiser Bowtie Bar. I think that would be a solid meeting place. I don't know, have everybody buy like the cheapest ticket possible, and then we'll all meet up there. We'll work it out, though. We'll work it out.
Sure. So I still see some guys with a lot of frustration in the comments, and I'm not going to filter them all out just because they're not happy. And Greg Hughes clearly is upset with the Reds right now. And listen, Greg, I don't blame you. You think they're never going to be good under Castellini, and he deserves that label. Both Bob and Phil deserve that the fan base feels that way about them. And I am not for 1 minute trying to say that they don't deserve it and that it's wrong. I just think that they've now taken enough of a beating that maybe they'll get out of the way and let the baseball people baseball a little bit within the confines of the budget. And I think Nick Kroll can do that. I think he showed us last season he can take his marching orders, but he can also work quality baseball deals. And if he can work quality baseball deals, he can make this team be competitive. Once you make the playoffs, anything can happen. We've seen that time and time again.
Right.
So he's just got to qualify for that last wild card spot, and anything can happen. And I know I can feel everybody rolling their eyes right now that, oh yeah, qualify for the final wild card spot. Well, that's where it starts. I think that can happen as soon as 2024. And then you start talking about division titles as these guys get better and better and better. And yeah, are they going to start trading those cats? They are. It's a sad reality.
There's a ladder that they're climbing. And as much as we want them to be at the top rung tomorrow, it's just not going to happen. They've got to go rung by rung. They've got to get to the point where they're ready to play. And I feel for everybody that's frustrated because, I mean, I go through certain spurts with this where it's just like, oh my gosh, why on earth do I root for this team? But I never have that question for very long. I love the Reds. And I understand that under this owner right now, they've never done anything. But I think the biggest thing that this current ownership regime can do, like you said, Steve, is just get out of the way. Like, I understand that we all want them to sell, but we are not going to convince a group of people to give away the investment that they currently have. So how can they make the investment work for them without getting rid of it? They can just get out of the way and let Nick Kroll and let the people that he has brought in to help him do baseball things.
Debbie checks in again, and I think she shares a feeling that a lot of people do. You know, she says it's hard to not get attached to players She said she's still grieving losing Luis Castillo. I mean, you know, Jeff's got Luis Castillo on the wall. That picture behind the mic stand right there is an autographed Luis Castillo. You know, we all love Luis, and baseball is just not this way anymore, guys. We're not going to have a bunch of career, decades-long Cincinnati guys that don't ever go and play anywhere else. I think those days are mostly over. There'll be a few. There'll be guys they lock up, but we're going to have to get used to this new model. And I understand that that's hard given the amount of years we've spent getting attached to guys and you know, following our favorite player. But, you know, I think as we all learn to just root for our favorite team and whoever happens to put the uniform on that day, we're going to find a little bit more happiness as the win totals continue to grow.
And it sounds like we're trying to sing Kumbaya and be shills for the team, but we're not. We're literally just saying, look, like, Reds baseball is something to be enjoyed. And if you're going to turn the game on every single day and be like, well, sell a team, Bob, then how are you going to enjoy the game? Like, I just want you all to enjoy the game the way that I do. And that's kind of, it's where I'm thinking. Like, I'm hopeful that this plan works out. I'm not saying I think it will. I'm hoping it will. But this is the plan that is going to happen for this Reds team. The plan is not going to suddenly change and they're going to go out and sign $300, $400, $500 million contracts for 9, 10, 11 years. That's just not going to happen for the Cincinnati Reds. They're going to have to find other ways to be viable, and they think they have an idea to do that. So why am I going to crap on the future that I do not know what is going to happen?
Let's try and take a few more of these, Jeff, before we wrap it up. We're coming up on the 1 hour mark here, but Austin Boley checks in and wants to know our thoughts on Jesse Winker being back in the National League Central. I have some thoughts about this. He is now a member of the Milwaukee Brewers. Is he going to be a Reds destroyer? That's absolutely what's going to happen. He is going to come into Great American Ballpark and go 4 for 4 with 5 home runs. That's what's going to happen. I know that that's statistically impossible. He's going to find a way to do it. I just am envisioning this moment where, you know, Jesse just shows up and does great, amazing things and becomes the new, I don't know, Ian Happ, or becomes the new Christian Yelich, that he'll learn it while he's over there playing with him. I have fear about this. I don't like it.
It's very interesting because depending on who you ask, there's two very different thought processes on this. Because I'm with you. I think that Jesse Winker is probably going to show out. He's going to figure it out, and he's probably going to do it against the Reds. The nice thing is the Reds now play less games against the division rivals, not like a ton less, but a little bit less. But on the other end of the spectrum, if you listen to Brandon Steid over at Locked On Brewers, he's not convinced. He thinks that Jesse Winker is going to be a one and done.
Wow.
So yeah, Scott he thinks that Brandon Stein thinks that so he's looking at this and the moves that they have made, that the Brewers are low key moving into a sort of rebuild, and he thinks that Jesse Winker is a placeholder because he becomes a free agent at the end of this year.
It could be interesting. I mean, there was some speculation that Jesse would try and come back to Cincinnati for a lot of reasons. He has a lot of personal reasons to get back to Cincinnati, and I don't know that I would support that move, but I listen, I want Jesse to have some success against everybody but us. He can be, hit 900 on the season as long as all of the outs come against the Reds when he plays them. I mean, I really want good for him. I was really disappointed with how his season turned out heading out to Seattle, and the things that came out after the fact were a little disheartening. And I hope that that was just a little bit of circumstance getting in the way of his baseball.
There are Seattle people that said, yeah, you remember the Jesse Winker trade? No. Sorry. The Eugenio Suarez trade.
That's exactly how that worked.
See that coming. Didn't see that coming.
Ray is asking about Tyler Stevenson get extended. I don't think it will be in the next year, Ray. I think he's going to have to play an entirely healthy year before they look at extending him.
Well, I do think, a year from now, we could be talking about that, like beginning of December.
So off season 2023. Okay. Yeah. I can see that. If he plays a healthy season in 2023 before 2024 starts, I think he's definitely a candidate to get extended. And if you didn't watch that interview, there's a two-parter, guys. Jump back in the archives and watch both of those. It's great. I did tell Tyler Stevenson to jump off a waterfall, and I'm sorry. I'm hearing from you guys on social media. I wished I could have reeled it back in as soon as I said it. It was Chad Dotson, Hunter Green vibes all over. I understand. I know.
Don't you remember? You're not supposed to go chasing waterfalls. No,
that is where we're gonna end our live Aloha Friday for the day with Jeff quoting lyrics from Don't Go Chasing Waterfalls. Thanks so much for making Locked On Reds your first listen of the day, and for joining us for our live Aloha Friday edition of the show, folks. We tell you this every time we do this. It is so much fun talking baseball with you all, taking your questions, taking your comments. Follow us on Twitter in between shows. I'm at S. Offenbaker with 2 Fs. Jeff's at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. We love the back and forth. We love hearing from you. Send us your questions. Send us your comments, and we will try and get to as many of them as we can. Coming up next week, more off-season coverage. Maybe the Reds will make a move. Maybe they won't. We'll just have to wait and see. But if they do, the one place you can be sure to find out about it is right here, Jeff.
Right here, because we will be Locked On Reds every single day.